What is going on, beautiful people? It's your man Louie T here with another installment of the Louie T Network podcast. Episode 336 for those of you keeping score at home. It is Wednesday, and I'm feeling really good today. Last night I got the first good sleep of the week. Maybe that's why I feel so good today. Been chopping it up on the other channel with people. Oh man, I just love talking music. I want to talk some ball today. Got a lot of things that I want to get off my chest today. I got a list. I'm feeling listy, so I started listing things. So we're going to get to all of those things and more here on the latest installment of the Louie T Network podcast that starts now. The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description. Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the 336th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. So today on the show, we're going to talk about the 5 teams you think have the best chance to go from non-playoff team in 2022 to a playoff team in 2023. I think this list actually has some intriguing teams on it. There are so many factors that go into lists like this. There's so many wild cards this year. So we're going to talk about that here shortly. And another question for you guys. You know, I love, this is one of the topics I love. I'm not going to spoil it, okay? But I'm going to talk about something at the very end of this show that is interesting. And we can have I think we're all going to be on the same page when we get to that portion of the show. I really do truly believe that. I do want to start off first by talking about a little bit of the association. We had the first game of the conference finals. Western Conference Finals got underway last night. And the Denver Nuggets impressively, pretty much start to finish, wire to wire, took care of the Los Angeles Lakers in game number 1. Joker was fantastic. So was Anthony Davis in defeat. They're going to need that from him. And the problem is, I just don't know if they can get that from Anthony Davis. I mean, he put up a 40 and 10 double-double, but that was overshadowed by the Joker's 34, 21, and like 14 triple doubles. So, I mean, it's hard to have a 40-10 postseason game overshadowed, but if anybody can do it, it's the 2-time MVP, Nikola Jokic. This guy is just ridiculously good. And it's funny because people try to downplay his greatness. Oh yeah, he's this or he's that. My buddy's like, oh yeah, but he doesn't really do this or he doesn't really do that. And all he does is just post triple double after triple double and lead that Nuggets team. You take him off of that Nuggets squad and they're not even a playoff team. I mean, that's the impact that he has. You know, he was fantastic last night and he's going to need help. And he got help last night. You know, guys stepped up. Caldwell Pope, I think is going to be key in this series. They're going to need guys to space the floor, knock down some shots. He wasn't as efficient as you would like him to be, but he poured in 21, and they're going to need guys like him. Obviously, you know what you're going to get from Jamal Murray. I'm still waiting on a breakout game from Michael Porter Jr. I haven't seen that yet, but he chipped in double figures. And anytime they can get a nice, solid contribution from Brown off the bench, which they got last night, it only makes them that much tougher of a team to defeat. So they get it done in game 1. I thought the Lakers were game, even though they were down big early. They had a treacherous first quarter, and we've seen that in these playoffs. When you fall behind big in the first quarter, it's an uphill battle to climb, and they fought like hell after that, and they got it, I think, within 8 in the fourth quarter, maybe even as close as 6. But they were never able to actually overcome, you know, the Denver Nuggets. And I think the final score ended up being like a 6-point game, like 123 to 117 or something to that effect. But That's going to be a good series. I've already said this. I did not expect the Lakers to steal game one like they had been doing, but I said as long as you get one of these two, you're going to have a chance to win this series. If they don't win any of the first two games, I don't think they're going to win the series. I've already made my point. I think they're going to win the series. I think they're going to steal game two and win the series. But if they don't do it, I think they're going to lose the series. And it's so hard to win in Denver, as teams have found out around the league in the postseason this year. It's not easy going to Denver, playing in that altitude and coming out victorious. I don't think they've lost a game this postseason at home, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong about that, but I feel pretty confident that they didn't lose any games to Minnesota at home. They didn't lose any games to the Suns at home, and I don't think they're going to lose any in this series unless the Lakers put up another big performance. It's hard for me to imagine Anthony Davis doing what he did 2 games in a row. It's hard for me to envision that. So, and they got, and the problem with last night is you got a big game out of Rui Hachimura. You got a big game out of Austin Reeves. You got a monster game out of Anthony Davis. You got a solid game out of LeBron, which is probably what you're going to get the rest of the postseason. You're not going to get dominant performances. He doesn't have that in him anymore at his age. And so you got the perfect storm. The game you got last night was good enough to beat all the teams you've played in the playoffs to this point. You would have beaten Memphis with that performance. You would have beaten Golden State with that performance. It wasn't good enough last night, and that should be scary if you're a Lakers fan. Going to be fun to see what the Eastern Conference looks like tonight. I expect Boston to win this series, but I'm done counting Jimmy Butler out. I'm done doing that. So I'm just going to watch that thing unfold and see how everything goes there, but I'm done with that. Yeah, I expect the Boston Celtics to win that series. I don't expect it to go 7. But I didn't expect the Miami Heat to even be here. So I'm done counting Jimmy Butler out. Anyway, I digress. Let's get to my gem dropping session, shall we? Yeah, I think we shall. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T-double-E. Let me open you up, get you thinking a little bit. So I got to thinking about off-season things, as I usually do, trying to keep up with the happenings of the league. And one of the things I ran into while doing that was a list of 5 teams that weren't playoff teams a year ago that they, that particular publication thought could be playoff teams this year. And I thought to myself, oh, that's a good topic. I'd like to chime in on that. I've done that before on the podcast. I usually like to do worst to first, but every year there's large turnover in the NFL playoffs in terms of teams. And I don't know what the number was last year, but usually there's 4 to 5 teams every year that enter the fray that weren't there the year before. So that's commonplace. That's common practice in the NFL. You expect there to be 3, 4, or 5 teams that didn't make it the year before that make it the following year. The Giants weren't there the year before. They made it last year. The Vikings weren't there the year before. They made it last year. The Dolphins weren't there the year before. They made it last year. Let's see. Anybody in the AFC? The Chargers weren't there. The Jags weren't there the year before. Both of those teams made it. That's 5 right there. Am I missing anyone? I don't think in Seattle. Seattle wasn't there the year before. And I may be missing a team. That's 6 out of 14 teams. So damn near half the field was in the playoffs or got into the tournament this past season that weren't there the year before in 2021. So, and again, I could have left a team or 2 out, but that tells you all you need to know about the turnover, the high turnover rate of playoff teams in the NFL. And with the unpredictability specifically in the NFC conference as a whole, and the emergence of what I think is going to be the strongest division in the AFC East this year, I look for more change and turnover in the playoff the playoffs this year. So with that said, I'm going to throw out some honorable mentions, some teams that didn't quite make the list, ended up on the cutting room floor. However, um, I would not be shocked if these teams found themselves in the postseason. Um, Normally, when I make a list, it's of 7. That's a large number, so I'm going to shrink it to 5. But I do have honorable mentions. So the first honorable mention is the Pittsburgh Steelers. I never count out Mike Tomlin. The streak that he is on is one of sheer brilliance. I don't know if we've ever seen anything quite like this before. Now, there hasn't been a lot of championships to accompany it, right? So it takes a bit of the luster off, but I don't give a shit about that. At the end of the day, how you are able to do what he's done for the better part of a decade and a half is mind-boggling in a league that is ever-changing, in a landscape that is ever-changing, and in a sport where injuries occur every single year that are game-changing, season-altering injuries, and he's had quite a few of them happen to his team and had to endure his fair share of them, specifically with Ben Roethlisberger. For him to have not endured a terrible season where the bottom falls out and has never incurred a losing season in his career speaks volumes. And I think in year 2 of Kenny Pickett, with a offense that I feel like is starting to really fortify itself, crystallize what they ultimately want to do. And I think Pickett's experience that he gained last year is invaluable. If TJ Watt is healthy for the entire season last year, I'm not sure the Steelers don't make the playoffs last year. But TJ Watt's health is, I can't begin to explain how important and impactful he is to the success of that team. I'd be interested to see, and I don't know if there's really a metric that can measure, like this isn't baseball, like wins above replacement and, WAR and all that stuff. I don't think there's a statistic that you could draw up to tell the importance of a player. But if I were guessing and I had the ability to take one player in the league and say, non-quarterback that is, that had as big an impact as a quarterback could, I'd say it's TJ Watt in terms of his team's success. Yeah, Aaron Donald is really big in LA, but TJ Watt, for me, they're a totally different team when he's on the field. The Steelers, I feel like, are putting it together. And obviously, a lot of what they do is going to hinge upon the development of Kenny Pickett. But health is also going to play a huge part. And if TJ Watt's healthy and Kenny Pickett continues to develop with the weapons that they're, continuing to build, and I think the identity that they're trying to establish on offense, if that goes off without a hitch, look out for the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's a tough division to have to navigate with Baltimore and Cincinnati, and assuming Cleveland is on the rise again. It's a tough division to have to navigate, but I think that division plays the AFC South this year, so it's going to give the Steelers a chance to get their shit off. And if they build some confidence, look out for the Steelers. I've got them as one of those teams that is on the outside looking in right now, but don't be surprised if the Steelers come knocking and somehow they actually end up in the postseason. How about the Carolina Panthers? I know this may be a little early for them, but they play in the worst division in football. If it's not the AFC South, then it's the NFC South, right? I look at how close they were last year, and obviously it's a lot going on there. When you got a new coach, first-year quarterback, the weapons may not be as dynamic. There's a lot of question marks there. And so I think it's a little early for the Carolina Panthers, but I'll say this. They established an identity last year. They have a different coach, so that's going to change. But they were able to run the football very effectively last year. They were very physical. They've got a very good defensive unit. And if they can continue to get the most out of that side of the football, it's going to allow an offense that may slightly be behind the time it needs to catch up and mature. In a division that isn't very good, with Tampa Bay and Atlanta and New Orleans, maybe the cream of the crop in that division. We'll see. We can't say that for certain. Don't really know what Derek Carr is going to do in New Orleans. But in saying that, that division is terrible. And so anybody can come out of that thing, including the Panthers. I like Bryce Young a lot. You guys know how I feel about Bryce Young. And if anybody is good enough to come in year one, hit the ground, and lead their team to a postseason berth, it'd have to be winning the division. They're not going to end up like 11-5 or 11-6 or 10-7 and end up, getting in via a wild card. I'm assuming somebody's going to win that division at like 9-8 or 8-9, right? That's what I'm looking at that division as. However, why not Carolina? I mean, there are probably plenty of reasons why you're like, I can give you many reasons why not Carolina. You listening? You got pen and a pad? Because I've got time. I jot these down. I'm pretty sure you've got quite a few reasons as to why. But I'm just telling you, that division's as wide open as it gets in the NFL. Even more so than the AFC South, where I think Jacksonville is starting to separate itself from the rest of that division. There's no clear-cut winner in the NFC South. And because of that, it's anybody's guess. Carolina was in that thing until the bitter end, and I think they upgraded the quarterback position. They stabilized it, if nothing else. And we're going to see if they can, put enough weapons around Bryce Young in year one to have them be a potent enough offense to complement what I think is a very formidable defense. I'm just saying, look out for the Carolina Panthers. It may be a bit early. I might be a year or two too early on them, but I would not be shocked in that division. It's less about them, more about the division that they're in. How about the Bears? The Bears. They seem to be the chic pick this year as one of the teams that is going to make the playoffs this year after missing it a season ago. They're giving me the Detroit Lions vibes of the late 2000s to early 2010s. Every year with Matthew Stafford, the Lions were the chic pick to, upset some things, turn some playoff brackets upside down. Every year it was the Detroit Lions with Matthew Stafford, and every year they would proceed to puke all over themselves. I mean, just diarrhea of the mouth every single time. I'm not saying that's what the Bears are going to do, because Justin Fields did some really, really creative things with his legs. If nothing else, he showed that he can be a playmaker in this league. And that can take you a long ways. We've seen it. I mean, look at Lamar Jackson. Now, Lamar also is capable of throwing the football and very accurate at times, even though a lot of people don't like to give Lamar his credit and just do as a passer. I've seen games where Lamar Jackson threw it over 40 times and I think there was a game against Indianapolis where he led them to that ridiculous comeback on a Sunday night back in 2021. I think Lamar was like 37 or 43 that night. And these weren't dink and dunkers either. All right. They were down big, getting their asses handed to them. And Lamar staged one of the best comebacks we've probably seen in the last 5 to 7 years. Obviously with the Colts' help, but it doesn't matter. Lamar was sensational. I don't see those qualities in Justin Fields as a passer right now. I just don't. And even though they've put one hell of an offensive roster around him, and I really like the job. We were hypercritical of the Bears last offseason for not putting enough talent around Justin Fields. Well, if you're going to be hypercritical of them when they didn't do it, you have to be equally as willing to give praise when they do. And I think they've done a fantastic job of being aggressive, going out, getting guys. It started last year when they went and got Chase Claypool, and they've continued on that mission of getting Justin Fields as many weapons as he could ask for, adding DJ Moore and that big, blockbuster trade at the top of the draft, and so they've added weapons now in Chicago. There's no excuse. So now let's see what he does. Defensively, I still think there's work to be done on that side of the football. Don't think they're a finished product by any stretch of the imagination. And I do think there's still some growing pains yet to go with Justin Fields. With that said, he showed the ability to make some things happen. And now, if nothing else, you have to respect his legs, and that should open up tons of real estate for him to throw the football. Now, can he do it accurately, and can he do it a lot faster? I thought last year he stared some things down. I thought he was indecisive. He wanted guys to be college and Ohio State open, and this is the NFL. You got to throw guys open. So we'll see if he's able to do that. He was in a new system last year. It's no longer new to him. This is his second year. He should be more comfortable. Let's see what the Bears do. I still don't think they're going to get it done. But that division, as I mentioned, it's open. Why is it open? Because of the next team in that division, the Green Bay Packers. They're one of those teams in that division you just don't know. Detroit is another team we're going to talk about in that division. You just don't know. Vikings, are they going to build upon what they did last year? Who's to say? But Detroit and Green Bay, I'm going to start with Green Bay. They're interesting. Jordan Love is the key. We can stop right there. We don't really have to elaborate on this. Jordan Love is the key. We have no idea what Jordan Love is going to be, but he's going to have to be special because I don't love the talent that is surrounding him right now in Green Bay. I don't love what they have at receiver. I think they added a tight end, so I'm not too worried about that. I think they added a really good one at that, a good pass catching tight end if he can stay healthy. But I don't love the receiving core in Green Bay, and they didn't do much to. Jaden Reed doesn't move the needle for me, and I may be wrong about him, but he doesn't move the needle for me right now. So we'll see. We'll see if they did enough to surround Jordan Love with guys that can elevate his game. But I think he's going to have to do the elevating, and that's a lot to ask of a guy that doesn't have but one career start under his belt. You'd like to have a lot more talent surrounding him. And while Green Bay's defense has shown the ability to be good, I don't know if it's legitimately good or not. I don't love their defense. I don't hate it either. But we'll see. We'll see. They did add some pieces on that side of the football as well. And we'll see what that unit looks like to help out Jordan Love. Detroit, they just barely missed the list, if we're being honest with one another. If there was a sixth team, they'd be it. For me, I felt like they got hot last year at the end of the season, and then there's just this assumption that it's just going to roll over into 2023. And unfortunately, that's not how it works in the NFL. I think you can take momentum from the season prior and use that to help you in your off season and build morale that way. But as far as actually wins and losses, that doesn't carry over like it does in season. You start to believe with the group that you currently have, you win a game and you win another game, and now all of a sudden you're like, hey, why not us? And it just bleeds over, and next thing you know, you've won 4 in a row or 5 out of your last 6. When you have a totally different roster, which happens every year in the NFL, you might have most of your core players back, but it's not the same team. There's no Jamal Williams on that team. He led the NFL in rush touchdowns last year. He was a huge emotional leader for that football team. He is no longer there. And while they replaced him with a guy that may probably be more talented than him in that same division, in David Montgomery, he's oft injured, and he's not the leader that Jamal Williams was for them. So they lost some things last year. They had the issue this year in the offseason with their receiver, Williams, out of Alabama. They thought he was going to be a huge addition. That was like an additional first-round pick they thought they were getting this year to start the season off. He's going to miss the first 6 games of the season because of gambling. So I think that the Lions are going to take a step back. They're going to lose some games early in the season that maybe they could have won if they would have had all those guys, and been the same team that they were last year when the season ended, but they're not going to be to start next season, with Williams being out and not having, either one of the Williamses, rather. But we'll see. They could prove me wrong. And, trading DeAndre Swift, we'll find out if that's a good move or not. I love the guy that they got in Jahmyr Gibbs. So it's not really me personally. I love the swap out. I love it. I think they got better in that particular instance. But we'll see what happens with the Lions. I'm not buying that they're just going to pick right up where they left off at last season. And then finally, the Rams. They're a wild card as well because I really don't know what to make of the Rams. I think the luster has finally faded off of Sean McVay. I mean, you can't get any hotter than he was, say, 4 years ago. What he did, honestly, I think his star never shined any brighter than after the 2018 season, even though they lost the Super Bowl. Remember, that was the offseason going into 2019 where if you knew Sean McVay in high school, if you crossed paths with him in middle school, if you guys shared a stick of gum, right? Like if he opened a pack of gum and offered you one, you were getting at least an interview. I don't know if people feel exactly the same about him as they once did, but he can still coach. He hasn't forgotten how to do that. I just think some of that luster, some of that wow factor has been removed. And I felt like he never adjusted to the league adjusting to him. He had all this innovation when he first came in, the little muddle huddle he would do, rushing to the line, changing tempos. They would run the same plays out of different formations. They would get to the same exact look. And it's not like they were the first ones to do all of these things, but they were the first ones to really do it with such, I felt like, impact consistently. And it felt like the league got wind of what was going on. They adjust, as we often see in the NFL. And I don't feel like he ever truly readjusted. He just went out and said, hey, I'm going to keep doing the same shit, but guess what? I'm just going to get better players. So you can't stop it anyway. Hence the Cooper Kupp, hence the Jalen Ramseys and Von Millers and Matthew Staffords of the world. We're just going to do it on a much higher scale. Same shit. Just can you stop it? I got better players. Odell Beckham Jr., good luck. You're going to need it. I got some upper echelon dudes. When you remove the upper echelon talent and you go back to doing the same shit, I don't know if they are able to replicate what they once were. But Matthew Stafford being healthy changes a lot in LA. We'll see what they're able to do. Anyway, I digress. Let's get to the 5 teams that I think are going to actually move the needle this year and make the switch from non-playoff team to playoff team in no particular order either. Start with the Denver Broncos. Let's call them number 5. All right. Denver Broncos, Sean Payton, big offseason acquisition, and every single one of these teams have a massive offseason acquisition, which is why I feel like they have a chance to do it. Like, it's hard to do the thing that everyone wants to do, which is make the postseason if you didn't do it the year before. It's hard to do that if there isn't massive change, like a big change somewhere along the line. Something has to change. You can't just take what you did last year unless you were a damn good team and somehow injuries or something like that took effect. It's hard to just stay status quo and expect to just be better the next year unless you're building. You took this thing from the ground up and there's a foundation and you put it in, like the Lions, for instance. They've built this thing and now they're building. They didn't do anything major this offseason, but the biggest thing they probably did was keep their offensive coordinator, because a lot of people were sniffing around him, and they were able to stiff arm everybody. And he said, hey, I really want to be a part of what they're building here. I think it's something special. I want to hang around for it. And I think that in itself is going to give them a fighting chance. And they're building. And so that's why I said they would be on this list. But I think the teams that have made moves kind of leapfrog them in this process. Broncos are one of those teams. Getting Sean Payton is just so huge. I mean, look, they got talent. I talked about this. I can't speak for you. I've always felt like Denver is one of the most talented football teams in the entire NFL. When you look at their talent and you go from their roster top to bottom and you look at it across the league and you say, hey, uh, who stacks up with teams like the Chiefs and the Eagles and the teams with all these talented football players? I look at the Broncos and say they're right there. They're just not as coached. They're just not as well coached. And last year, Russell Wilson was not good, but Nathaniel Hackett was a hack. He was a joke. All right. So removing him, adding in a Super Bowl winning coach in Sean Payton changes everything. And so I think the Broncos are right there in the mix this year. And if Russell Wilson gets back to the Russell Wilson that we knew in Seattle and not the one we saw last year, the Broncos are going to be a damn good football team. We know what that defense is every single year, it feels like. And so we know what the defense was last year in the face of some of the most inept offense we've ever seen. That defense was rolling. And if you just add in Sean Payton and what he can bring to the table offensively, I'd like to think the Denver Broncos are going to be a playoff team. Even in one of the toughest divisions in football, with the Chiefs and the Chargers on the rise, I still think that the Denver Broncos can be right in that mix in the AFC. How about the New England Patriots? I talked about the AFC East being what I think is going to be the best division in football this year. You got the Bills, you got the Jets now with Aaron Rodgers, you got the Dolphins who made the playoffs last year. And I think the Patriots, who barely missed it themselves, even with the dysfunction on offense with the whole play calling situation, I think they cleaned that up by bringing in Bill O'Brien. Like, that's a massive offseason acquisition that not enough people, I feel like, are talking about. That cleans up a lot of the problems. Like, you say what you want about Bill Belichick. He's not the greatest personnel guy. They don't draft all that well, but they're really good at finding guys on other teams that they see the value in, bringing them on board and getting the most out of those players. And if Bill Belichick can't do anything else, he can coach up some defense. Now, he wasn't great last year, but the offense didn't help either, right? The offense didn't help them out much either. And I just look at what they're able to do defensively, what Belichick is still able to do as a mastermind on that side. And now you take the offensive side of the football. Mac Jones was really good in his rookie season. That's why they made it to the playoffs in year one. They got smoked when they got there, like 48-7. But nonetheless, the reason they got there is because Mac Jones was really good in his rookie season. He regressed because of the offensive woes in the play calling. They fixed that. I think the Patriots are a dangerous team this year, dangerous enough to get one of those final wild card spots in the AFC. How about the Saints? I talked about how bad that division is with Carolina. And so that gives everybody in that division a fair shot. But of the four teams in that division, and much like I said about Carolina, it applies to the Saints. There's only one bid from that division. That division isn't getting multiple teams in. It could turn out to be that there's a Seattle Seahawks in that mix. Baker Mayfield resurrects his career like Geno Smith did, and the Buccaneers are right back in the postseason again for the fourth year in a row. They had Brady for 3 years, right? Fourth year in a row. Maybe that happens. But Brady got there in 2020. Yeah, so 3 years. So fourth year in a row. Highly unlikely that takes place. But yeah, I won't rule out anything. But the Saints, to me, are the most stable of any team in that division, specifically at the quarterback position. Defensively, they got a really solid unit. And what probably impressed me the most was their offense last year. Despite having Andy Dalton as the starting quarterback and, Jameis Winston as the backup, and having those two guys kind of, be interchangeable pieces, but Andy Dalton pretty much beat him out the entire year. I thought that they showed some talent last year with Olave and Jawan Johnson. We already know what you have in Alvin Kamara. And I just looked at that talent that they had, and Shaheed emerged last year. And I think you look at what they have offensively and you say, they got some talent now, man. Like, they got some legitimate talent, and then adding Derek Carr to that mix really gives them, I think, the head up on the rest of that division. And so I'm going to say the Saints end up winning the NFC South this year. And because of that, obviously, they will make the playoffs. And what I think is a one-bid division, I think the Saints take it. And so they'll be a playoff team in 2023. How about the Commanders, Washington Commanders, my Commanders? Yes, I'm biased, okay? I will admit this. I'm very biased, but hear me out. Yes, Sam Howell, very green. Only one career start under his belt. Lot of growing pains to come for him. I don't expect him to be without fault, you know, in you know, a lot of the action next year, there will be mistakes. And I that's built into the equation. But unlike a team like let's say the Steelers, for instance, with not the Steelers. There was a Jordan Love. That's the one I'm looking for. The Packers. I think it's a very similar situation. Jordan Love doesn't have a lot of experience. One career NFL start. The difference is he's been in the offense that he's going to be in, performing in for the last 3 or 4 years, however long he's been in the NFL. That's the only NFL offense he's ever known. So that's going to make his transition to being the starter much more fluid and seamless. However, I don't love the supporting cast on offense. I don't love their team overall. And because of that, remember, this was a team that struggled mightily with Aaron Rodgers last year. Not to say that Rodgers was great last year, but they struggled mightily with Aaron Rodgers. So if the struggle was real last year with Rodgers, I think it's going to be even realer this year with Jordan Love, unless he comes in and, as I said, and he's capable. I mean, if he looks anything like the Jordan Love as a junior at Utah State, look out, But I think Sam Howell doesn't have to be what Jordan Love is going to have to be for the Packers. He's not going to have to be that. They've got a tremendous supporting cast around him at the receiver position. The running back position is loaded. They've revamped the offensive line. That's the key. If the offensive line is good enough to protect, open up some holes in the run game, I just don't see Sam Howell failing. I just don't see it. However, if the offensive line isn't any good and he's forced to use his legs a little bit more than we want him to, disaster could strike. But I think they've done enough to this offensive line to put it in a position to compete at a much higher level this year. And just like I talked about with all the other teams on this list, they had a big offseason acquisition in offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy that I think is going to change what Washington does offensively in ways you can't even begin to imagine. If you're not a Washington fan, then it's hard to explain the level of frustration that we had with our previous offensive coordinator, Scott Turner, and his inability to put the ball in the end zone, his inability to have situational awareness, killing us in critical third and fourth down situations. That's where games are won and lost in this league. And our offensive coordinator pissed away at least 3 or 4 games last year in a season where we missed the postseason by a game. So, yeah, it's pretty frustrating knowing that there were opportunities there last year and we let them go by the wayside. That said, in the quarterback situation, the position didn't help either. We missed opportunities because the quarterback wasn't good enough. I think we fixed both of those things, honestly speaking. So I think this is a solid defense. I'm more nervous about the defense, believe it or not, than I am the offense. And we've upgraded the defense significantly, specifically in the secondary. You're getting Chase Young back fully healthy this year. There's a lot of reason to be excited. Him and Montez Sweat are going into contract years, so you expect the best out of both of those guys. There's a lot of reason you should be optimistic if you're a Commanders fan, and none more important than Daniel Snyder selling the team. There's so much optimism around this team, and not just because of ownership change, even though that's the biggest reason. Eric Bieniemy coming on board, Sam Howell being the new quarterback, I think there's a lot of reasons why the Commanders can make the playoffs. They only missed it, and this is the thing that I continue to harp on. They only missed it by a game last year with mediocre quarterback play and poor coaching. The coaching is going to be better this year. The quarterback play is going to be better this year. I think Washington has a chance to be better this year. And I think the rest of the division is going to come back down to earth. So that helps too. I don't think Philadelphia is going to be as good. I think Dallas has a chance to be as good as they were last year. They made some upgrades, but I don't think Philadelphia's roster is better than it was last season. And I think the Giants, their roster is technically better, but now there's been a full year to take a look at what they're doing offensively under, second year head coach Brian Daboll. And so I think there are going to be adjustments made now. There weren't those opportunities really last year, full body of work. Now you've had a chance to pick them apart and see what they're doing with Daniel Jones and see if you can't take some of those things away. They got some more pieces now. It'll make them a little bit more dangerous, but we'll see what happens. There's not enough tape out there on Eric Bieniemy as an offensive coordinator, which leads me to believe that that's going to make it tough on teams, especially early in the season, to catch on to tendencies. So I just like where Washington sits. Think they've got a chance. They're one of the 5 teams I think are going to have an opportunity to make the postseason that didn't make it a season ago. And then obviously the number 1 team is the Jets. The Jets with Aaron Rodgers coming on board. What more can I say? I mean, Aaron Rodgers changes the whole outlook of the New York Jets. We talked about that with the schedule release the other day and how many primetime games they got. They're on Black Friday. The NFL is even entertaining the Jets as the customary team for Black Friday. You know how on Thanksgiving you're always getting the Lions in the first game slot. You're always getting Dallas in the second game afternoon slot. That's never going to change. They're thinking about making the Jets the permanent team on Black Friday. They're not considering doing that if Aaron Rodgers isn't there. That's the kind of impact that he has had on that team in this offseason. Their Super Bowl odds are way, way up. That's because of Aaron Rodgers. So I think there is a lot of buzz surrounding the Jets, and rightfully so. And they've made some great moves this offseason, and they're a dynamic offense. Their defense is really good. I like the energy that they have with their head coach, Robert Saleh. There's a lot to like with the Jets. I really feel like if Aaron Rodgers is playing the kind of football that we know he's capable of playing, if they protect him up front on the offensive line and he's got time with all the weapons, he's got an offensive coordinator that he trusts, that he knows, and Nathaniel Hackett. There's a lot of things in place to make that a successful transition for Rodgers. This could easily turn into the Bucs of 2020 with Brady and a championship for the New York Jets. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but at a bare minimum, if he's healthy and they protect him, they're a playoff team, I believe, in 2023. So that is my list. Patriots, Jets, Commanders, Saints, Broncos. What's yours? Leave it down in the comment section. So let's transition to social media maneuvers. I'm a midday marauder. Y'all know what it is. If y'all are out there, you're watching the show, please take this opportunity to like this video. All right. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already done so. And also go check out my other channel, MusicHead University. Uploads are every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at noon. What it is if you haven't been exposed to it, if you're a music fan, if you're a music lover like myself, then that channel is definitely something you want to check out. Now, again, if you don't love music and you just want to support, if you're going to watch the channel, then sub up. If you're not, then don't. Okay. So that it's a cross between this channel and then music being infused into it. So but it's got a theme. It's a little bit different from this channel in that it's a theme. It's theme based. And so it's a lot of fun. I'm already enjoying myself thoroughly over there, chopping it up with everybody who loves music like I do. And so if that's something that tickles your fancy, please head over to MusicHead University on YouTube, sub up, and you won't be sorry. That said, I wanted to throw out a couple of things, and then we're going to get to the comment section. Y'all know how that works. If you're new, use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read on the air. If it is pertinent and time permits, we'll get to it. Super chats are the way to ensure that your comment gets read, however. So if you want to make sure that your comment is read, super chatting is the way to do that. I want to mention a couple of things before we get started. One, this Dalvin Cook situation is getting very interesting in Minnesota. I feel like there are a couple of dominoes that have yet to fall this offseason that I expected to fall already. Quinnen Williams not getting his deal in New York with the Jets is another one. He's done the social media thing, scrubbed his social media clean of the Jets, all that good stuff. It's a tactic that we've seen used almost exclusively in the NFL, in particular, with guys looking to get a new deal. This is not new. He won't be the last player to do this. He's going to get his deal eventually, but it hasn't happened yet. And he's getting frustrated because he was among like 4 defensive tackles this offseason that were looking to get paid. I think every other defensive tackle has gotten their money. You've got Jeffrey Simmons in Tennessee. He got his money. Daron Payne with the Commanders has gotten his money. I feel like I'm leaving out one guy. He got his bread as well. We saw Javon Hargrave get broken off in free agency by the 49ers. So he's looking at all his contemporaries, all these other guys around the league at his position getting paid, and he's still sitting there waiting for his. So he's probably very frustrated right now. I figure the Jets will take care of him, but it's just taking a lot longer than he would like it to. However, the Dalvin Cook situation is interesting because we just assumed, much like we did with DeAndre Hopkins, he'll be traded, somewhere around the draft. Hopkins looks like he's going to be staying in Arizona, but Dalvin Cook's situation really seems like it's still unresolved at this point. I saw a little article where they've taken Dalvin Cook off of the banner on the website. You know how everybody looks to promote their website with the team, and they'll put like all the star players in the little banner. Dalvin Cook's absence from that speaks volumes. They've instead inserted Alexander Madison into that banner. So that's very telling. Something I feel like is going to happen. I've seen that the Vikings are open to holding on to him. I just, at this point, it doesn't feel like he's going to be back. It feels like he's going to be playing his football elsewhere next year, but that's also something to keep an eye on. Devontae Adams had some very critical comments of his general manager, Ziegler, in Vegas. I told you guys that he's going to demand a trade at some point this year. I feel it in my spirit. If it's not during the season, it's after it. He's not going to be in Vegas much longer. He's already come out and criticized the direction of the offense on his football team. He's smoothing things over. He took a picture with him, posted it on socials today, on IG in particular. And so that's supposed to quiet some of the noise, but he said how he felt and he meant what he said. There's no direction. This is the same shit that everyone was saying in New England last year. And look what happened. Look what ensued. Problems ensued. When there's no direction, when you can't actually physically see what's happening and make it make sense, that's a problem. And Devontae Adams, remember, part of the reason he came to Vegas was to play with his boy. His boy is no longer there. And I know he didn't come there to play with Jimmy Garoppolo. And he showed last year, no matter what the situation is, I'm going to get mine. But I know he also wants to win. So we saw him push down a cameraman and have to smooth that situation over. He's a competitive dude. He wants to win. If it goes south this year, I could see him asking for a trade. So we'll see. That's a situation. I'm just telling y'all right now, monitor that situation. Not now, into the season, monitor that situation. Anyway, I digress. Let's get to the comment section and see what you guys have to say. I do have a few supers here, so I want to go ahead and knock those out. John Perez, my guy, JP, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, last night's Lakers L left a bad taste in my mouth. Any loss in the postseason should leave a bad taste in your mouth. You didn't wet the bed. You didn't go out and embarrass yourself. You ran up against the number 1 seed in the NBA, not just in the Western Conference, in the NBA, the best record of any team in the league, not named Milwaukee, is the Denver Nuggets, and they protected home court. They did what they were supposed to do. Now let's see what you do in game 2. The reason I'm a bit discouraged, and if I were a Lakers fan, I would be, is I don't know if you can play much better. The only thing you may be able to do slightly better is shoot, and you're not a good shooting team, right? you're not going to shoot it well. LeBron probably isn't going to go 0 for 4 from 3 again. Like, he's probably not going to do that. But you got contributions from Rui, who was big last night. Austin Reeves poured in 20 or 24, something like that. Anthony Davis went off for 40. D'Lo was awful last night, and look, he's hit or miss, and maybe that's the thing that maybe helps you. But if D'Lo shoots better, Anthony Davis isn't going for 40. So I think that's kind of a trade-off. If D'Lo, gives you 18, Anthony Davis isn't giving you 40. He's probably going to give you more along the lines of 26. So I don't know. Last night is discouraging if you're a Lakers fan, because you played about as well of a game as you can get from your role players on the road in particular, and it didn't yield you. And Anthony Davis can't play much better than he did last night, and it yielded you a loss. So that's a tough, bitter pill to swallow. But we'll see what you do in game 2. It's a pivotal game for me, because if you can't steal one of these early ones, I don't see you coming back and stealing one late. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Colton Wheeler, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Colton Wheeler, writes, I'm very concerned we are putting way too much faith in Sam Howell. I could easily see us missing the playoffs, but I'm still hoping for the best. I also like what we did with the O-line. Maybe not this, he said, may not be great this year, but we got younger. I like what we did with the offensive line as well. How could you not? It was terrible last year. I was not a fan of the moves last year going to the older Carolina Panthers guards. But, we were so invested in John Masco as an offensive lines coach last year that I told you I don't necessarily believe in Trey Turner and Andrew Norwell, but I believe in John Masco's ability to get the most out of two guys that used to play for him and played their best football under him. So by virtue of that, I'm just going to buy into what they're selling me. And that was a mistake. So I just like the fact that they said, nah, we're not doing that this year. So I think the offensive line is going to be vastly improved, which is going to help. And you have every right to be critical of Sam Howell. Again, people are uncomfortable with the unknown. It's hard to wrap your brain around something that you can't see necessarily. Like, you haven't seen enough. There isn't a large enough sample size for you to feel confident that he's going to get it done. I get that. For me, I know what I've seen from him. I've listened to enough people talk who know him, who, know what this guy's DNA is all about, how he's wired. And I just think there's a level of focus right now. This guy's locked in and he wants to be great. And this doesn't feel like Carson Wentz or Dwayne Haskins or any of those guys that were here previous to him. This feels different. This feels like we got it right this time. So he checks every single box. The only box he doesn't check is height. But he checks every single. If Sam Howell were 6'3", he'd have been a first-round pick, and we wouldn't be having this conversation. He wouldn't even be in Washington right now. But he wasn't 6'3". So I feel really good about him. Mentally, he's got it up here. Physically, he's got all the tools you need. Again, I think we got it right this time. So I feel really good about it. A1 the Great, thank you for becoming the newest member of the MOBB mob. Y'all know what to do. Stand up. We in the building. Y'all know what it is. A1 the Great, thank you for coming on board. Man, I look forward to chopping it up with you in the near future. As always, mob, welcome this man with open arms to the squad. Yes, indeed. Red Wings 01. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, Red Wings 01. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Writes, Embiid can have his MVP. Joker getting the last laugh. By the way, if you read my comment for the 5 guys in the roster trouble, I'm sorry for how long it is. When you gave me the advisory warning prior to me hitting the, see the rest button, or, whatever it says, read more. I think it says read more. You warned me right as I was hitting that button, like, hey man, I apologize for the length of this. I'm like, look, man, I've been doing this for over a decade. You can't type more than what I've already seen doing this for over a decade. And then I hit the read more button, and I saw the most words I've ever seen on a YouTube screen in my life. And I could do nothing but laugh because he said, I'm sorry in advance. And I was like, bro, don't apologize. There's no way it could be. Holy shit. Oh my God. That has to be over 3,000 characters. So it's okay, man. I enjoyed it. I read it. And I'm probably going to read it again. I'm probably going to read it on the show tomorrow night. More likely than not. We'll see. I appreciate that much thought being put into your comment. Okay. And to your point about Embiid, look, they couldn't give it to Joker 3 years in a row. Okay. They weren't going to do that. So that's that. Even though he probably could have easily won it again. I thought Embiid could have gotten it last year, honestly. So a lot of times in the NBA, this is one of the things that frustrates me in the NBA, is they will delay an award by a year. So Monty Williams, I thought, should have gotten the Coach of the Year award the year the Suns went to the NBA Finals and lost. He didn't get it that year. And because he didn't get it, they gave it to him the next year. The Suns weren't even as good as they were the year prior. And nobody saw what they did that year they went to the finals coming. And he should have won it that year. Instead, they didn't give it to him that year. I think they gave it to Doc Rivers. And so he got it the next year. And I thought my coach, Taylor Jenkins, should have gotten it. No one was predicting the Memphis Grizzlies to do anything that year. And we had the second best record in the Western Conference. Taylor Jenkins should have won the award, and he didn't get it. I'm kind of glad he didn't get it, because now if you win NBA Coach of the Year, you get fired. Mike Budenholzer, Doc Rivers, Nick Nurse, and I'm forgetting someone. I think there was one more guy that won the award, and I was just shocked that he got fired. But yeah, I'm kind of glad my guy didn't win it. But in saying that, they gave it to Embiid. Embiid earned it first and foremost, but I thought he should have gotten it last year. But he was the MVP this year. Embiid deserved it. But Joker was right there. You know, it's the same thing we used to say with Jordan. Jordan could have won MVP every year he played in the league. You can't give it to him every year. You gotta give it to somebody else, man. Anyway, Joker is definitely getting the last laugh, and the kind of success that he's having is going to make it tough on a team like Dallas, who has an international star who's dying to win, and he's going to look at Joker's situation and say, hey, if you can't give me something like that, I want out. So they better fix it in Dallas fast, quick, fast, and in a hurry. Reedy Davis, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Reedy Davis writes, Lou, Lakers disappointed last night, but Command D got to carry the team for Sam H to so it don't matter. So I don't think the defense has to carry us. I just think the defense has to play consistent football, and I think the offense will handle their share of the load. The problem in past years, since Rivera's gotten here, is the offense never carries their own weight. It's always up to the defense to be able to carry their weight and have to drag the offense's carcass along with them. And that's just too much to ask a defense that's not elite. It's too much of a weight and a burden to bear. I don't think they're going to have to do that this year. That's why I'm so optimistic, is that I think the defense just has to do their job, and that's it. And, you know, they're going to have some weeks because we're playing some better offenses where they just may not have their fastball, and that's okay. But all in all, I think this offense is going to give them a fighting chance this year. So with that in mind, I like where we sit, and I really think we're going to have a legitimate shot, as I mentioned. Joe Rockhead, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Joe Rockhead, writes, fans seem to think Sam has to be Mahomes to win. Not the case. He just has to be better than Heineke and Wentz. EB and the weapons will do the rest. That's kind of the sentiment that I have. As long as the offensive line, don't leave out the offensive line, Joe Rockhead. That's a huge part of this equation. The offensive line, like I said, and I've said this many times, and I'm going to continue to say this. A lot of you may not want to hear this. We let Carson Wentz down before he let us down. All right. We failed him before he failed us. It was 7 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. in the or 3 interceptions over the first 2 weeks before the offensive line collapsed, and then he collapsed. Right, so keep that in mind. If the offensive line isn't doing now, he's way more mobile than Carson Wentz is Sam Howell. So even if the offensive line isn't great, he can make things happen when things break down. He's shown the ability to do that with his legs. So that's an added benefit that we didn't have last year. And Heineke has refused to run since like early in the 2021 season. He's refused to run. So we got a guy that isn't shy about running. He wants to stand back there and throw it, but trust and believe he will take off and run if need be. And they're going to build in some, called runs and some RPOs and things of that nature that are going to really hurt teams because they're not used to seeing those things from us. We don't run RPOs. We don't run them effectively. We don't have a guy that is actually a run threat. And so when they actually do pull it and run, remember what Heineke did, the spin move he put on the Vikings last year? There were opportunities for Heineke to pull the ball where there's nobody on the backside because they just don't expect him to run. They're not looking for Sam Howell to run early. They will be eventually. But once they start looking for him to run, that's going to open up the run game. It's going to open up some avenues for the pass to these tight ends up the seam. There's going to be opportunities that haven't been here in the last few years that are going to be here because of Sam Howell and the athleticism that he brings. There's so many layers to this. To your point, EB is going to bring in a different dimension and a dynamic here that we haven't had. And like you said, our weapons are elite. They're not good. They're elite. I expect a healthy Jahan Dotson to take that massive sophomore step. We know what Terry is. I thought Curtis Samuel was outstanding last year. And, we'll see what happens with the De'Ami Brown or anybody else that they may add at receiver. Tight end they can't be any more ineffective than they were in the past game than last year. So we know we're going to get more from them. And the run game, I think, is going to be, much better. So I like where we are. I like what we have, and I like the situation that they've built around Sam Howell. So anyway, I digress. Monty, thank you, Mike Lowry. Monty Williams was the other guy that got fired in Phoenix, which I was like, my buddy's a Suns fan, and he was like, bro, Monty had to go. And he explained it to me, and I get it. Some of the things he was saying, I just thought Monty was dealt a raw deal, a raw hand. Like that was a tough situation. Once they and Monty, just for the record, Monty never wanted to trade, the guys that he traded to go get KD. He wanted KD, but they didn't want to have to give up Mikal Bridges. That same roster with Mikal Bridges is an NBA title contending team. No Mikal Bridges, no Cam Johnson, and they're done. That was it. They traded away too much, and they had to. That's the only way you were going to get Kevin Durant. And there was no way the Brooklyn Nets were going to do that deal without Mikal Bridges being in it. And I think Monty did the best that he could. And I also think that you have a mentally fragile big man in DeAndre Ayton who missed game, what was that, 6? With a hip injury. This time of the year, if you can walk, you play, right? Like, how many guys have had significant injuries? If I'm not mistaken, game 6, Andrew Wiggins played with torn cartilage muscles. Like, it's the playoffs, dude. You can't sit out unless you're like, I can barely move. Okay, fine, I get it. And it was a hip, so I don't know. But DeAndre Ayton, I got Anyway, I digress. Let's go ahead, because we're short on time today. Let's go ahead and move to garbage time. Quick question for y'all. So I don't know if you saw this, but Matt Ryan took a job as an analyst for CBS Sports. So good for Matt for transitioning. And did I miss something? Did Matt formally retire and we just missed it? Where was the one-day contract with the Falcons, whole press conference, bring your family up, that whole deal? Did I miss that? Or did that happen and I just wasn't paying attention? Or that was as quiet a retirement as I've ever seen. That said, clearly he's done with football. and you really never want to get to the point where football quits you. You want to quit football. That's what happened to him last year. Football quit him last year. It's the same thing that just happened to Carson Wentz, but I mean, it's not like he had the career that Matt Ryan had, where you can even have that conversation. But what I really want to ask you guys is Matt Ryan a Hall of Famer? Career's done. The body of work is there. No Super Bowl. He should have won one. Obviously, 28-3 will forever haunt him. But is he a Hall of Famer? Had he won, and if you say no, had he won the Super Bowl, would that have changed anything? If he had some hardware, would that have changed it? My answer is no. You guys know I am a hard ass when it comes to who I let into the Hall of Fame. And look, depending on who you talk to, Matt Ryan's probably a Hall of Famer. He won a league MVP. All right. I feel like Phillip Rivers is a Hall of Famer and he never won an MVP. Right. Matt Ryan played in that same era with the same quarterbacks in the league, and he won an MVP in 2016. So there is that. He's got gaudy numbers. He was a damn good quarterback for a lot of years. I think he went to like 4 Pro Bowls. Maybe even there's an all-pro or 2 in there. Maybe. At the end of the day, I don't think he's a Hall of Famer. Had he won a Super Bowl, I think the conversation maybe gets a little bit more interesting. I still don't think he's a Hall of Famer. But one of the criteria that you look for is, was he ever among the best at his position group in his career? And you have to say yes, because he won a league MVP. So I don't think he is a Hall of Famer, but there will be a debate once he is eligible. There will be a conversation about Matt Ryan. That is for sure. And I think it'll be one that is worth listening to. If he gets in, I wouldn't be pissed, but I'm like, really don't think he's a Hall of Famer, but whatever. Anyway, they're letting dudes in now. As Deion Sanders said, they're just letting in everybody in. Anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on the 336th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I thank all of you for joining me. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys in the near future. I'm hoping as early as Friday. We'll see, you know, how those Fridays go for me. If you're a Washington fan, I will definitely see you tomorrow night. If you haven't had a chance, put out a video earlier today. I would love for you to respond to that, because we are going to talk about that at great lengths in much greater detail tomorrow night. So make sure that you have at least watched that video, even if you don't comment on it. At least watch the video so you will know what I am referring to. With that said, you guys go ahead, get out of here. I will get with you guys at a later date and time. Enjoy game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals, Celtics hosting the Heat. I'll have something to say about that and more probably on Friday. Until then, you guys take care. God bless and good night. The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description.
LouieTeeNetwork.